It's time to bring you yet another amazing episode. And now, welcome your host.
Hello, this is Omobola Stephen, the host of Live Knowledge by Omobola Stephen. On the podcast, we like to address or talk about disruptive mindset conversations, yet constructive in nature, on topics and subjects under personal development and self-improvement. Personal development and self-improvement is a lifelong process we must embrace in order for us to transform from where we are to where we need to be. Now, when we embrace personal development and self-improvement, we get to find ourselves along the course of the line. And in getting to find ourselves, we get to realize that there are endless possibilities to who we can become and to what we can achieve in life. This is the mission and the focus of Live Knowledge by Omobola Stephen. We shine more light on what is truly inside of us and how we can bring it to the fore, harnessing and maximizing it to the fullest, and becoming fulfilled in the side of eternity as our life truly desire it to be. On today's show, I have David Essel, the best-selling author, a life coach, and counselor. And so, thank you, David Essel, for joining me on the show today. We will really talk about mental health issues and health and wellness.
Yes,
Hi, David.
Omobola. Oh, I'm so happy to be here with you. You know, in a recent study by American Psychological Association, massive numbers of mental health challenges. They found in the study 79%. Now, this is of Americans, but we can pretty much say it's the world now. It's not just Americans, but 79% of Americans reported they did not have the emotional coping skills necessary to deal with everything we've gone through, from current inflation back to COVID. 80% of marriages reported that their marriage was at the worst it's ever been. And then 40%, but I think this is really underreported, Omobola. 40% of Americans reported that they're struggling deeply with depression and or anxiety. In my private practice, we see that more at about 80 to 85%, especially anxiety. Anxiety seems to be one of the most difficult of the mental health challenges that people are facing today.
All right, thanks for that introduction, David. And so we will be diving into the discussion right about now. We like to begin with the stress management, anxiety, and depression, which is something that is truly a discussion we need to be addressing day in, day out. So do you think that our belief system, or some other belief system, do you think has everything to do with the manifestation of these three: mental illness or sickness?
Yeah, well, you know, with what's going on, Omobola, no one has ever experienced what we're experiencing now that we can remember in the history of the world, you know? So when the human organism is hit by something that they can't go and even talk to their parents about, where their parents went through this, you know, 50 years ago or something like that, or their grandparents, no one's gone through what we're going through right now. And so the human mechanism isn't used to this type of overload. And we also have to remember, you know, in the past, when there was tragedy, it wasn't shown 24/7 on, you know, YouTube and on Facebook and on the news and all that kind of stuff. So over the years, technology has been a great aid for us, but it's also been a huge pusher of anxiety. I mean, anyone today that's tuned into the news on a daily basis is filled with anxiety. I can guarantee it. You can't watch that stuff and be inundated with those scenes and the emphasis on words by reporters to get people's dopamines all riled up. You know, you can't go through that on a daily basis and not have anxiety or depression or even a feeling of hopelessness. You know, one of the mental health illnesses that people don't talk about enough is procrastination. Procrastination turns into a mental health illness when individuals are procrastinating, taking care of their mental health, taking care of their physical health, taking care of their spiritual health, taking care of their financial health. You know, we're in a totally different world here, boy, and we've got to learn how to emotionally regulate, or these statistics will continue to rise.
All right, but really, I like us to look at this with the modern age perspective, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, well, you know, when we have the world on its knees, and the world was on its knees 5 years ago or wherever it was, 4 years ago when the pandemic hit, you know, it is just mind-blowing. And I remember, Omobola, that I was doing a session in January with a client in London, And he said, hey, he goes, I may have to cut back on the number of sessions I'm doing with you. And I said, well, that's fine. You know what's going on? He said, businesses are closing here. This was January. Now it hit the United States late February, March. We got really hit. But all of a sudden, clients that I was working with from other parts of the world were shutting down. They were going home. The businesses were closing. I mean, it was one of the weirdest experiences in our life. And you know what? What's really created more and more stress, more and more anxiety, depression, PTSD, hopelessness, procrastination, is that it seems like we've been going from one crisis to another, isn't it, over the last number of years? It started out with the whole COVID thing, and then it turned into the racial diversity, and then it turned into the political diversity, which is still out of control today, and then the inflation and the wars, that of course we're all affected by. It just seems like every time we might want to get a little bit of an edge and feel some hope, that we get hit from another side. And this is why so much of my work over the past, very, very long time has been about helping people to understand what emotional regulation is. It's a fancy term for that we have the tools necessary to deal with the stress, to deal with the triggers without reacting negatively emotionally for a very long period of time at all. That's basically what it is. So it's not that you're stress-free. It's not that things don't hit you. Your partner doesn't trigger you and say something that you know is going to make you upset. Those things will still happen. The difference is we start to learn how to react to those circumstances differently. That's emotional regulation. That's an emotional control. And the greatest thing I can say is that when we get to this level, which is very hard to do, but when we get there, our self-confidence, Omobola, goes through the roof. When we can control our emotional response and someone says something to get underneath our nerves and we don't respond, oh my Lord, we have mastered, at least in that moment, our emotions, which is incredibly powerful.
Right. Really, thanks for sharing that thought with my audience. Talking about emotional regulation. Is there any strategy we can employ? And also, I'd like you to tell me why it's really important for us to begin to talk about emotional regulation in this time. So, and in terms of confronting our emotions, which is something really difficult at this time because we are trained as human beings, to have the emotion of fear. And so most times we have that thoughts that triggers to fear, and we have most times that our emotions run the most part of our lives and put us in trouble. Now, in understanding this, is it possible, is it best for us to act or to react?
Is it best for us to what?
To act or to react?
Well, okay, really good question. The very first thing that I want to go back to something you said, a minute ago. When we say, why is emotional regulation so important? If we look at the school murders today in the last 20 years, by students, not just school murders by people coming in from the outside, but from students in the school, which happens so frequently, it's just so sad. There's no emotional regulation, obviously, there. Now, I'm much older. I'm 67. When I was in elementary school, we weren't taught emotional regulation either. However, we didn't have access to all of the insanity that the internet offers in regards to anger, programs that create rage in teenagers. We didn't have that back then that would create the kind of environment that we're in right now. So when we talk about emotional regulation, one of the things I want to mention is that it really needs to begin, in the school system. I mean, well, at first it needs to begin at home, right? We need to have mom and dads being able to regulate their own emotional responses. I mean, that's the ultimate. If we can get all the moms and dads that are with us right now to really think about, how do my husband and I or my boyfriend and I interact in front of the children? Are we in control of our emotions? Because it all starts at home. Then somehow we need to get it into the school system. Now, a very good friend of mine, Scarlett Lewis, who you would absolutely love to have on this show, her son, Jesse, was murdered in the Sandy Hook Elementary School massacre, which is probably about 16 years ago now. I can't believe it's that long ago. I had a chance to talk to Scarlett 8 weeks after or 8 months, I should say, after the massacre. And it was incredible, her attitude. She has created a program that is in 180 countries all over the world, and it's teaching exactly what we're talking about today. It's teaching elementary school, middle school, kids, emotional regulation, how to forgive a friend who's hurt you, how to forgive someone who's betrayed you, how to discuss things that are hard to discuss, how to say something without, an attitude behind your tone. I mean, her program is stunningly amazing, and we need it. So thank God for Scarlett Lewis and what she's doing. Now, as adults, though, we need to be able to be the role models. Omobola, this is why it's so important to talk about this with adults. I don't care if you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, you are a role model to people around you. When something really difficult happens in public, we need to be able to use what's called discernment. Pull back for a second and say, do I really need to say something to this person? Do I need to give the person the bird who just cut me off in traffic? Do I need to roll my window down and scream at someone? Is that really necessary? That's emotional regulation. We're pausing. We're saying, I'm going to take a time out before I react. If the world could start to do this, can you imagine? Like, before I post on social media this attack on this other person who posted, let me pull back and hold for a second and say, is this really the best thing for me to be doing with my life right now? If we could get people into this, my gosh, we would solve so many problems. We would just really take care of a lot of the world's problems.
Right, absolutely, David. Now, talking about emotional regulation, I also think that it's also close to training our minds, mind training, mind regulation. I often tell my audience on Live Knowledge by Omobola Stephen, the personal development and self-improvement is a process. And so when we tell you to take actionable steps, the outcome doesn't happen overnight. It's something that you have to keep at heat before you begin to get to see the outcome, the result of it. And so I would like you to also let my audience know that in all of these that you've shared with them, they need to keep at it, right, in order for them to get to that stage of having an emotional regulation. Don't you think so?
Yeah, you're right. And what I ask people to do is look for opportunities that are small in nature to emotionally regulate. Like don't wait until you get into an argument with your lover and then say, okay, I'm going to learn emotional regulation now. Find something small that might be maybe someone cut in front of you a little bit and you go, I normally react here. I'm going to take a big breath and I'm not going to react. Maybe you're in the grocery store and someone cuts in front of you to get in front with their cart and you go, normally I say something to a woman or a man that does that. I'm going to take a big breath and let it go. So we start with small things. And the more we practice, and this is what I think you were referring to, the more we look for opportunities to practice on a daily basis, the more confidence that we get that when we are hit with something really, really big, that we know we can handle it. We can take a step back, make a decision if it's necessary to respond right now, or should I wait 24 hours to respond? I mean, one of the greatest tools in the world is called disengagement. And that's where maybe you'd like to say something nasty back to someone who just said something to you, or they sent you a nasty text or something, and you go, I'm going to disengage here. I'm going to sit and wait 24 hours, and I'll read that text again, and I'll respond then. I'm not going to respond right now. That's a combination. Well, that's a form of emotional regulation called disengagement. And it's powerful. First of all, when you don't respond, you're in control. Because most of us, when we get a response that triggers us, we want to respond right back. We get a text, something that someone says something we don't like. We want to, oh my God, the world of texting is instantaneous. But if you delay 4 hours, 6 hours, 24 hours, first of all, you're giving yourself a chance to logically think about the appropriate response, not just the emotional response. And then you get a chance to really sit and think, is it necessary to respond? Maybe I just let this go. And now we're in pure power. We're emotionally regulated. We have self-control, and life becomes a heck of a lot easier and less stressful. I can tell you that.
Thank you, David Essel, for that explanation and for sharing that thoughts to my audience. Now, I'd like us to talk on another mental health challenge, especially to the men in our society. Maybe it also applies to the women folks. You can share that or explain that better. Is addiction really a bad thing? Because I hear some people who say, I'm addicted to that relationship, or I'm addicted to you, I'm addicted to that school, I'm addicted to any other thing. Is it really a bad thing?
To be addicted to school?
No, I'm just saying, in terms of addiction, I would like you to share your own perspective on what addiction is. And also, really, we have people who say, I'm addicted to this, I'm addicted to you, I'm addicted to this school, I'm addicted to that. Is addiction really, is it a bad thing? And if it's a bad thing, how can we get to the recovery or the healing side of it?
Yeah. So the definition that we use for addiction is a return. It's when a person returns to any substance, thought, behavior, or individual that is not healthy for them. Right. So if we keep going back to a friendship where we're always getting in arguments, if we keep breaking up with our lover and keep getting back, that turns into an addiction. You do that 4 or 5 times, now that's turned into an addiction. So substances is easy, right? We have substances with alcohol and drugs and food and all that. Then we have behavioral addictions like gambling. Actually, food addiction is also considered a behavioral addiction. We have thought addictions. The thought addiction can be complete arrogance. I'm always right. You're wrong. You don't know anything that you're talking about. I'm the only one that knows what really is behind the conspiracy of the COVID vaccine. People can become addicted to being arrogant. People can become addicted to being that flower in the corner that's wilting and dying, zero self-confidence, zero self-esteem. There's just so many ways that we can harm ourselves, and so the world of addiction is out of control right now, without a doubt. Porn addiction is really, really high right now. Food addiction is extremely high, and alcohol. Now, we hear about like fentanyl addictions because of the people dying of overdose. And fentanyl addictions is a serious problem in the United States for sure. Alcohol, food, oh my gosh, just off the charts. And we're using it because the times are so crazy. And if we continue to go, I'm going to keep repeating this. Addictions grow for a reason. There's actually benefits to addiction. So if you're addicted to the news, the benefit of the addiction is it numbs your brain to the insanity that you're putting yourself through by watching the news every day. If you're addicted to social media and arguing or whatever it might be, and then you eat your way from 8 o'clock till midnight with sugar and salt and everything else, you're numbing your emotions. You're just completely numbing them. And so what we say to people today is the most important thing is to get involved with your own self-control. Addictions take us down these nasty roads. One of the things that a lot of men don't understand is that, especially the younger they start with porn addiction, it hijacks the brain to such an extent that I'm working with 24 and 28-year-old men that cannot make love to their girlfriends because their brain has been hijacked and they need the constant changing of the video in front of them in order to stay erect. So, there's a lot going on right now in the world of mental health and addictions. Every addiction in the world is created by some mental health challenge. If we're bored and we can find an addiction to take away the boredom, if we're angry, if we're sad, if we're a victim, there's 1,000 reasons of why today people are looking for a reason to escape reality. And addictions do that. They bring us a benefit. You're out of reality for a short period of time. The only problem is you got to repeat the addiction the next day.
Absolutely. Thanks once again for that, David. But I like to ask this question really. Is addiction recovery, is it really possible? How long does it take?
Yeah, the greatest news in the world, excuse me, is that anyone can recover from any length of addiction, from any depth of addiction. It is happening every day all over the world. Millions of people recover every day from food addiction, alcohol, drug addiction, gambling addiction, sex addiction. It doesn't matter. You name it, people recover. For 30 years, I was an alcoholic and a cocaine addict. And I started at 12. I started very, very young. I was in a lot of pain as a child, and I found drugs and alcohol as the only way I could figure out how to get out of my pain. And it worked. Now, of course, it brought a lot of complications with it, but for a short term, it worked. Now, 30 years is a long time to carry that, but I did, and I look back at that now, Omobola, and I say, going through the addictions, going through the recovery is one of the greatest gifts I've ever been given or gave myself, in my life. Because even though I was helping all kinds of people get sober and clean before I got sober and clean, the rate of recovery of helping clients went up dramatically when I got sober myself. And it's been a very, very long time. I love my sober life. It's a hell of a lot of fun. You never have a headache. You never have a hangover. Rarely do you say things you wish you didn't say the next day, type of a thing. So all I can do is encourage people that if you're struggling, if it's been a number of years, reach out and ask for help. I mean, I'm an addiction counselor and I couldn't get myself sober. I had to hire other counselors, for God's sake. Don't feel embarrassed. It's not like a bad thing, that you have an addiction. It's just that you have an addiction. So we don't want shame and guilt. There's enough shame and guilt. We don't have to say, I'm a bad person because I'm an alcoholic, or I'm a bad person because I'm a spending addict or a porn addict. We just say, you know what? I'm addicted to porn and I need help. And that's all we do. Or I'm addicted to food and I need help. I'm addicted to nicotine, or I'm addicted to whatever it might be, and I need help. And that last phrase is crucial. Admitting to yourself that you need help is really the first step, and make that call. You may call 3, 4, 6, 8, 10 different counselors, therapists, coaches, until you find the one that, is right for you. As a matter of fact, I just started a couple of weeks ago with a new client, and he had interviewed 20 counselors. And I was at the very bottom of the list. I was the very last one that he interviewed, and he hired me to work with him. So, keep that in mind too. And I want to say this, these type of shows, like what Omobola is doing right now, is so important for this world. Like, let people know she's got this show, share it with your friends, get the message out there. Most of the messages that we're getting in the media are extremely negative. They're limiting, they're creating more addiction and more reasons for addiction than ever before. But these type of shows are what we need. We need people who are willing to say, hey, we can change. We can be better. We can beat stress. We can learn how to emotionally regulate if we're 80 years old, for gosh sake, and you can. So I just want to really have you promote this show as much as possible. Let's have more people watching this than the news, and then we can see a different world.
Absolutely. It's been a great time listening to David Essel share your thoughts, especially addressing mental health issues and health and wellness. So talking about mental health issues, we like to talk about the post-traumatic growth. So what do we need to know about this, and are there ways to in it?
Yeah, post-traumatic roots, a lot of guidance to go into post-traumatic growth, and it's where we're all heading. Even if we don't think that we've had trauma, everyone's gone through trauma in the last 6 years, okay? I don't know a soul that hasn't. Even people that are living, in caves in the Himalayas, energy goes through mountains, and so there's a lot of stress there. With post-traumatic growth, it's a matter of looking at what caused that trauma and making sure we know what the triggers are and we have solutions or tools. And that's where the word growth comes in. Post-traumatic growth. The growth part of it is the tools. How am I learning from this? How am I a better person now that I'm sober? How am I a better person now that I've taken care of my food addiction? How am I a better person now that I've been working on my meditation to calm my anxiety? So in post-traumatic growth, it's all about actions to move us forward. When we help people with post-traumatic stress disorder, we help them find the origin or the roots. How did it begin? Why did it begin? What are your triggers? All of that is there. When we go into the growth phase, it's like, how many action steps can we add and help this person learn to be able to emotionally regulate, to be able to boost the amount of dopamine and serotonin in their brain through amino acid supplementations, exercise, etc. So there's so much available now these days, even aromatherapy for post-traumatic growth, for gosh sake. A great way to boost your spirits, your focus, or to relax with aromatherapy. We've just got a million tools out there. I feel so fortunate to be in the world of counseling and coaching in this year because of everything that's coming out all the time, new opportunities to help people heal, which is what we're all about.
David, do you have any exciting news or any projects you like to show my audience? Yeah.
Well, you know what? We have I do have exciting news. You can get 5 of our books for free at my website. So when you go to the website, just go grab those books for free. There's 5 of them. It's talkdavid.com is the website, talkdavid.com. You can also get there by davidessel.com. It's the same website. But, I would say go there definitely. And, if you want to jump on the phone for a 20-minute session with me, absolutely free. We do it all the time, and you'd be surprised in 20 minutes how I might be able to give you a step or two to get you moving in the right direction. So when you go to talkdavid.com, you can sign up for the 20-minute session. We have about 200 or more blogs on topics from relationships to suicide to addiction to attitude, so you can read the blogs. Everything's at talkdavid.com. And I've got to do a shout out to my former mentor, Dr. Wayne Dyer, who died a number of years ago. But, he's the one in 1990 that encouraged me to give my products away for free. All the way back in 1990, when I asked him, what can I do to build my business and to help this world the most? He said, find something that you love and give it away. And that's what we're still doing to this very day. 5 books for free at talkdavid.com. Go enjoy them all.
Great. Any parting word you'd like to share? We also like to have your social media handles on your website.
The limitations that we have in front of our brains are often made up and aren't real. I never believed I would ever become an author, and I just didn't think I was creative. I was an athlete. I was a jock. And then one day someone said to me, you tell really creative stories. You should write books. And ever since that day, I've been writing, but I never thought that I'd ever write books. And I don't have any background in literature. I don't have any background in broadcast journalism. And I say all that to you because don't let that kind of stuff get in the way of doing what you're here to do. Too many of us are here for a direct purpose and we may not have found it yet. But if it's not where you're currently working, if it's not what you're currently doing as a profession, let's start to reevaluate. Time on this earth is very precious and very short. And you have a purpose. If you're in it, oh my Lord, praise God, say hallelujah, jump up and down if you already know what your purpose is, because when you go to work or you go to your profession every day, you can't wait. If you're not in that position, let's find something even part-time, maybe something weekends that puts you into that mindset of, oh my gosh, because that could grow into a full-time position, right? So you're here for a purpose. Let's find it. Let's get engaged with it because it makes life so much more fun.
Right. Can you share your social media handles and your website? Thanks for sharing the motivation, David.
You're welcome. Talkdavid.com is the website. Easy to remember, talkdavid.com.
Thank you once again, David Essel, best-selling author, life coach, and counselor, the author of the book, Helping Americans Heal, and so many other books that you've published, best-selling author indeed. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on mental health issues and health and wellness, how we can get it right in this chaotic, distressing times of our life. We need to start focusing on this and discussions in order to make the world a better place to live in at the end of the day. Now, this is the mission and the focus of Omobola Stephen. We like to shine more light on what is truly important for us at the end of the day, because we really realize the importance of also talking about purpose and fulfillment in all of our life's pursuits. And so Dr. David Essel has addressed the issue of purpose, finding it and making meaningful subjects out of it. If you'd like to catch up with any of these episodes of the show, you can do so on any cross-promotion platforms or any podcast distribution platforms you bump into online. You can just search for Omobola Stephen and you have a great time, an amazing time listening to professionals, thought leaders, and experts share profound insight on topics or subjects of the personal development and self-improvement, how we can really get better, having a transformed mindset and moving from where we are to where we need to be. Till I come your way, I am Omobola Stephen. I need to say bye, talk to you soon. Thank you, David Essel, once again.
I had a blast. Thank you.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe and leave us a review.